Welcome back to Better Life, Better Business with local business coach and time management expert Christoph Nauer with Balance 6. I'm your host, Rebecca Troxel, founder and CEO of Rebecca's Vault. Now, normally, Christoph, you and I have a discussion before our conversations together, but today I kind of feel like I'm in the dark. What exactly are we going to be talking about?
I'm glad you asked, Rebecca. When you hear the title of that podcast, you'll be surprised. I call it proactive procrastination.
Okay, but I thought that you had always said that you're not supposed to procrastinate, but now you're calling this podcast proactive procrastination. I'm a little bit confused.
All right, I know. A lot of people have heard me talk about this, and most of the message is not to procrastinate. Okay? Absolutely, that's
Right.
true. It's something bad. We need to overcome it. Don't do
Mhm.
it. It's
Yep.
considered the most effective of all personal performance techniques to know and not to procrastinate. The fact is that we cannot do everything. So we need to procrastinate on some items. As such, you need to deliberately and consciously decide to delay working on certain small tasks. You need to put them off. Less important items that are not most critical ones on your list, they can wait. You put them aside. And that's proactive procrastination because you make a conscious effort and a decision not to do those.
Hmm.
Once again, going back, as always, by now you know, my mentor and trainer, Brian Tracy, he talks about eating that frog. Now, again, this is not about actually a gourmet meal, okay? He's not talking about actually eating the frog. He talks about needing to eat the biggest, ugliest frog first, which means the biggest, ugliest, most challenging task that we have to do first and procrastinate on the smaller items or the less ugly frogs and tadpoles. We all procrastinate sometimes, and sometimes I say, even I have a master's degree in procrastination. Well, I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to that. The difference between high and low performers is determined by what they procrastinate on.
Okay, so then if that's what determines high performers versus low performers, what exactly, if I'm a high performer, should I be procrastinating on then?
Glad you asked. We need to procrastinate on low value tasks. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are my low value tasks? Look at everything we have to do day in, day out. Of course, you heard me say this over and over again, write it all down, make a list, and you'd be surprised to see how long the list is of everything that you do.
Yeah.
Now look at all the tasks that need to get done and ask, who could do what? The thing about delegating that I always talk about in other uh, events and workshops, what can we eliminate? But most of all, what can wait? What can you procrastinate on? So this
Hmm.
is where this whole idea comes in.
Okay.
Um, in a recent podcast, I covered the 3 questions for maximum productivity. So I suggest to all entrepreneurs and business owners that they consistently, regularly ask themselves these 3 questions and use that as a basis to keep them focused on completing the most important task on time. The first one is, what are my highest activities, my highest value activities? Or, if you want to use Brian Tracy terminology, what are the biggest frogs I have to eat in order to get the greatest contribution to my business, personal life, health, and family? Number 2, what is it that only can be done by me and nobody else? This is from a late management guru, Peter Drucker. That's his question that he came up with, and it's always going to be a big one. Number 3 is, what is the most valuable use of my time right now? And this is the key question for time management. If you answer correctly, you can actually overcome the procrastination that you need to overcome, not the one that we're talking about today. Okay? So here's a direct quote from my trainer and mentor, Brian Tracy. He says you can get your time and life under control only to the degree to which you discontinue lower value activities.
Well, so that actually is something I'm very familiar with, is trying to discontinue lower value activities. Um, what would you say if someone is trying to eliminate those things and discontinue those activities? What's something like one word or one thing that's really powerful in time management that can help with those things?
It's very simple. It's a very brief two-letter word. No. No.
That word.
That word, yes. Warren Buffett was asked what his secret of success was, and he put it this way: he said, "Simple. I just say no to everything that is not absolutely vital to me at this moment."
Good advice.
I think so too. I agree with him on that. And he also is the one who says, "I can buy anything I want except time."
Yeah, so he understands.
So, if you currently don't do this, I highly recommend you start practicing it. Say no, graciously but firmly, to avoid agreeing to something against your will, unless, of course, you got plenty of time, right? I mean, if you have spare time galore, why not? But most folks, most business owners that I know, don't. So, to make this little step a little bit easier, you can ask for time. And this thing of asking for time, this little nugget actually has made one of my clients more money than my coaching fee. I
Well,
wish I
but
learned that before.
how exactly asking for time, how does somebody do that? Because I know for me, I always want to do everything for everyone. And so when
Hmm.
somebody asks me to do something, I go, "Oh, I'm really good at that." You kind of are stuck in the moment. I mean, how do you take time from that when somebody's wanting an answer from you?
Yes, that's true. And you're absolutely right. We all people pleaser. We always want to help. We always want to give, give, give. But there's times when that giving and that saying yes to everything is starting to have negative consequences in our personal life, on our health, and our business. Okay, so instead of jumping and saying yes right away, we can say something like, "Oh, I'd love to work with you. Let me check my calendar and see when my next opening is for that." That buys you time to then actually open up your calendar and see when can you actually accommodate that person. How long will it take you to do what this person is asking of you, and then can make an informed decision. You don't rush into it. Or if they say, "I need it right now," then you can say, "Well, I'm sorry, right now I'm just totally slammed, I'm fully booked, but if you're open to waiting till next week, I can have uh, a better answer for you, a more detailed, So you're buying yourself time so that you can actually make an informed decision. Um, and that is so critical. And people, when they see that you actually have a life, that you have things to do, that you're not available 24/7, that also shows them, oh, this is a very good business owner. He or she is not waiting and chomping at the bit, can't wait to get a job, because you don't want to
Really?
portray that desperation, because that screams desperation, and that's at least for me. I question it. What's something wrong with that person? Um,
Absolutely.
so as you know, I spend a lot of time about talking about prioritizing the famous to-do list. Now you have to deliberately and proactively decide on tasks not to do or to put off, which is that whole idea of the proactive procrastination. Because most of us procrastinate unconsciously without even thinking about it. And the result is we don't eat the big and ugly frog because that's the particular task that makes us uncomfortable. It's so big, it's so daunting, it's so, I can't handle it right now. I'll do it later. Well, later leads to later. And what happens too is the frog is getting bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier. And that all alone is really snuffing out our motivation and our desire to do things. When we do eat the ugly frog, we feel like $1,000,000 afterwards. We're motivated, we feel fantastic, we feel encouraged, we have a sense of accomplishment, and the emotions go on and on and on. So that's why I insist on this eating that frog so consistently.
So I like the idea of eating the big frog first, but what exactly are you telling all of us to do here? So the frog's getting bigger, the big ugly frog, and what to procrastinate. What exactly are you telling us to do with all of this?
All right. So we need to continually review our business and life activities and tasks. So because we all have so much going on in our lives, we need to look at them and look at where can we make some changes? Things can we abandon? What can we do less of? What are our low value activities that we can actually procrastinate on and put off or actually just completely eliminate?
Okay.
Some of those examples can be, we all do it. We cruise the internet, or Facebook, or, surf around, look at this. One thing leads to the next. And before we know it, we've spent an hour or two cruising the internet.
Yeah.
Well, that's not really a good use of our time. Um, so, what, binge watching TV, I'm not saying don't relax in front of a TV and watch something funny, but if it becomes too much and we spend too much time wasting on that and other things that are important don't get done, that's what I'm talking about. So looking consistent, looking for ways what can I eliminate that's using up my valuable time so I can free up quality time and then use that time that I free up to spend with family, to read, to exercise, or do whatever else enhances our lives. Okay?
Okay.
So, what tasks can I delegate or eliminate to free up time? That's really what I'm talking about. And this is something that we need to do consistently daily. It's like bathing or brushing your teeth. It's you do it over and over and over again. You don't do it only once. And this activity is not something you want to procrastinate on. Now, this decision alone can actually enable you to get so much of your time back and you get your life back under control.
All right. Well, so that's a lot of good information. What's something that everyone can do who's listening to this to start implementing this right away? Because I know, speaking of big frogs, another animal terminology is how do you eat a big elephant? You use this all the time, one bite at a time. So if we're going to take little bites and start working on how we eat our frogs and our elephants, what exactly would you give us to do? Do you have any homework or any suggestions for everyone listening?
Yes, I know the term homework turns most people off. And so I use the word practices in my business. I say, what
Okay.
we learn, we practice, what we practice, we become. So start practicing identifying low value activities. How much time do you spend on those low value activities? Which ones can you delegate and which ones can you altogether eliminate? And then how are you going to spend that extra time that you gain? You can emulate this quality by consistently asking yourself, what's the most valuable use of my time? Or what's my MVU, as I like to say.
That's awesome. This was actually some really great information today. And, I've always seen procrastination as a bad thing. You shouldn't procrastinate, but it's really good to get some clarity on that. And I'm excited to apply the things we talked about today. And I'm hoping everyone else who's listening is too. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And we'll see you next week at Better Life, Better Business.
This week's episode of Better Life, Better Business is brought to you by CA&C Video Productions. Since 1985, CA&C Video has been providing live streaming, event production, and analog to digital transfer services. They captured those life-changing moments, preserving your history for current and future generations. Because your history matters. Visit their website at cacvideo.com. Thank you so much for your sponsorship.
That's all for now. Thanks for listening to another episode of Better Life, Better Business with business and time management coach Christoph Nauer with Balance 6, the leading business and time management company in Northern California. Visit them at balance6.biz.